you.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's 12-2 Podcast. This is Kevin.
And I'm Bud. We're great. And we're just talking about someday we're going to have to do a bloopers version of this, right?
Maybe so.
Maybe so.
But we haven't banked many bloopers.
That's because we're doing our bloopers as we do the live show, right?
Exactly. I guess so.
Maybe they already have our
they've already
bloopers.
They've already seen them.
Bloopers.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe probably about fact check us or something like that.
Well,
they say the fact checkers are, they're the people who actually are hired by the people who say the things that need the fact checking in the first place and have the same ideology. So that's why so many things, when they say they're fact checked, they supposedly align.
I guess it is crazy. And then,
is.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand it, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, see, upside down.
Upside down.
Truth,
yeah,
right?
yeah. What you talked about this past Sunday about, right being wrong and wrong being right and up being down and down being up. So,
exactly. We're seeing a lot of it, right? There's so much to talk about. I know you got some thoughts, man.
Yeah. There is a lot to talk about, but and I know we kind of joked about it, but but we're gonna. I know that there's been this story that's come out of Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
About the population up there. I guess what is it? A town of like 60,000 people, and they've had 20,000 Haitians move into it. And the result of that has been, I guess, them going to the parks and taking the ducks, people's pet cats and dogs,
skinning the cats,
and
hanging out the fur and all to dry and everything, and
Ooh, man, that'd be kind of.
You were mentioning too the point about culture, right?
Yeah.
Cultures. This is an example of why assimilation and cultural identification in enforcement, right? Is so important.
Well, it also goes. I think it also comes to the fact that there are cultures that are more superior than other cultures.
Morally decent, decency, respect for life, right? This is a total example of that, right?
But it has nothing to do with that the people, quote unquote, are better.
Right.
That the people are worth more. That someone from that's not what's being said. When you say a culture is superior to another culture, it is the morality, the basis, the what that culture is built upon is superior to the culture that it's being compared to. And let's just take the example of the Haitian culture versus the Midwest American culture. The Haitians their country has never been able to get itself together.
Right.
I mean, I was personally down there. The earthquake, I can't remember, but not this most recent one, but the one prior to that, that the Clinton Foundation was all into and all that. I went down with Joseph Williams with Feed the Hunger. It was New Directions at the time. And never been to Haiti before, didn't necessarily know what to expect. We get in there and fly in there, and he's been, all his life, he's been going to Haiti. And he got off the plane, and we're driving to where we're going to stay, and he's looking around and he goes, this place looks the same as when I was here, when I started coming here, other than there's a little more rubble due to the earthquake. And he said, that was a country that had more money poured into it than any other country in the Western Hemisphere.
And probably more international mission trips by churches.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
And they've just never been able to get themselves out of the way. And I think part of that was the fact that they made a deal with the devil. If you give us our freedom, basically, we'll worship you. And the result,
there's a lot of that. Down there, right?
Yeah,
the
so there's
demonic activity is
tremendous
very strong.
amount, and it has nothing to do with location, because if you look at the island, half of it's the DR and half of it's Haiti.
Dominican's pretty civilized, right?
And when you fly over that island, the side that's brown is Haiti and the side that's green is the DR.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have the same type of resources. They have the same, everything. It's an amazing, from the air, you can see the difference, and it's a definite demarcation. Wow. And part of that is because, it's this idea of, if we see a tree growing, oh, well, that's an opportunity for me to make charcoal. So let's cut the tree down. And so they just wiped out so much of the vegetation there that it's that from the air you can tell
So
the
it's a
difference
wasteland,
between
basically.
basically. And
Yeah.
and we've seen lately, you know, where the gang activity has increased
Oh, yeah.
tremendously.
Mhm.
In fact, they overthrow the government. It's basically an anarchy going on there. And I haven't kept up with it lately, but I know that the guy who was leading, who had the most power at the time, was called the Cannibal. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so there was,
The
that was his,
Cannibal.
the lead of the head gang at the time. I don't know, which gang's in control, but a lot of that, a lot of those people fled, of course. And then, of course, they were just allowed into this country with no pretense of assimilation, with no attempt to say, hey, do your values align with Ohio Midwest values, or do they align with American values?
Right.
And that's important, because you can't take that. If your values system doesn't align, well, you're going to end up with conflict and problems, as we're going to see, as we see up there, because we love our dogs.
Yeah.
And they love our dogs too. It's just in a different way. They like them with rice, and we like them to snuggle with.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly.
So-
Oh, and you mentioned the cultural superiority. When you get down to it, it's not about one person being better than another, and it's not. You're exactly right. But when we look at cultures like that, and we can say that our culture is superior to theirs. Whenever we say that, Kevin, it always goes back to the cultures whose practices are more in alignment with scriptural principles.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't it amazing? I mean, somebody should do a research study on that, right? And come up with some type of a thesis or something.
I'm sure that's been done.
But I mean, like, is that not a duh statement or what? I mean,
the more, what's interesting is, the more civilized a culture is, it seems to have a couple of things going for it. One, the society as a whole, the people in the whole have agreed upon a moral structure in which they're going to live.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that tends to, an agreement and a loose agreement on religion. Is there a God? I mean, are we worshiping a God? What are we worshiping? We're typically worshiping something. Yeah. There's an agreement on what kind of government system we're going to have. Are we going to have, a monarchy? Are we going to have a parliamentary system? Are we going to have a representative system, or whatever the case is? And then there's an agreement on, hey, active civic interaction between people. We're going to agree that, hey, if I got a fence up, that means you don't come over into my yard. If I got a dog, that doesn't mean you serve it with rice, that type of thing. So there has to be those agreements. And I think that is one of the problems that we've seen with this huge influx of people that we're not even vetting. We're not even finding out, hey, do you agree with us? And that was, all through our history, we've of course been a country of immigrants and people from different places, and that's what made the American experiment so different from all other countries. If the people in Hungary were there because they were Hungarians. The Polish were Polish. And they had this common history. They had this common ancestry, and that's why they came together. With the American culture, it was like, we don't care what your ancestry is. We don't care what your family is. We don't care but do you agree with us civically? Can you agree with the principles that we are following or believe in, or building our country in? And if that's the case, you're welcome. We don't care.
And what makes that even more powerful is the fact that when you get down to it, at its origin, really, it was founded. We were founded as a country of immigrants anyway. Right.
Correct.
I mean,
correct.
That's exactly who we were. So, so the whole melting pot thing is not just something that's today. It's something that was in effect
from the very beginning.
The very beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's that, which I think makes it all the more powerful that we established a set of cultural expectations, and standards and norms that were biblically founded, biblically based.
Right.
So that's a powerful statement.
And, part of that, of course, was because of the settlement coming out of Western Europe, which,
religious freedom,
the idea of religious freedom,
thing,
but also the classics, the Greek ideas, and the early church ideas from, the Roman civilization, and the, the Catholic Church, and the struggles that Western, or Europe, I shouldn't say limited to Western, but Europe had struggled with. The American experiment was just birthed out of that because,
Sure.
most of those people that initially came were Puritans, Pilgrims, people from England, people from France, whatever the case is, Germans. I know there was a large war, and they came together and they said, hey, we're going to build a country on these principles, which was the Constitution, which was this idea of, and I think you talked about it somewhat Sunday, but, divine law.
Yeah, divine law. Yeah,
Which,
sure.
is called natural law in some places. And what's I find interesting is a lot of what's going on today is to try to deny that there is such a thing as natural law or divine law.
Yeah, yeah.
And Western civilization was built upon that idea.
Yeah, you have been very articulate in explaining the origins of Marxism. We had a few shows back or podcasts back. We talked about that, and we agree that. And you made the point that Marxism is simply a tactic, and the tactic in service to the goal of eradicating the idea, the concept, the reality of God Himself. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to eradicate that. So let's build an economic system that pushes God totally out of the way, and we don't. He can't be a part of it, and let's try to make this the new reality. And that's what they're doing. Now, here's my question for you. Okay, do you agree? I mean, we kind of agree on that, right?
It's definitely. We want to build a culture, society, an economic system, a political system that gives no mention to a creator.
Right, exactly. And so therefore, is it not, and because the United States, we have the origin that you and I talked about, can you comment on what is your opinion regarding this open border problem and why we have laws that worked for many years, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden, there was this, in my opinion, there was this power source that politicians saw. The more people we let in, the greater our voting block will be, the size of our voting block will be, right? And that is one of the motivations. But do you see now even this open border thing and what we're seeing in Springfield, what we see in Aurora, Colorado, with the Venezuelan gang taking on the apartment complex, et cetera? Do you see that the whole thing is this? And I know it's a satanic thing. And I kind of believe the people who are kind of letting this thing happen, they're okay with the demise of the United States as we know it in order to get the United States to a place where they have an opportunity to rebuild it from a Marxist, socialist, communistic society perspective. Comment on that. What's your analysis on that?
Yeah, I think that, there's several things going on at once.
Okay. Yeah.
First of all, again, I think that, the satanic element of it is just the destruction of human advancement, basically, of human life, human art, human, being able to build stuff and create.
Because those things were granted to us as a result of the fact that God created us, Psalm 139, right?
Yeah.
In ways to do these things. These are gifts from Him, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You think about art and, you think of some of the great artists and the beautiful things that they produced. They were just following after what the Creator had already produced. You think about... True. If you ever seen the Grand Canyon, or if you've ever seen a mountain scene, or you ever been to the ocean and seen a sunset, the beauty of the Creator. Well, artists, so many times they're just whether they realize it or not.
Right.
When they produce something beautiful and somebody stands in awe of it, they're just following their Creator. Yeah. They're just following that. So I think that there are several things. They're definitely with Marxism, with the oppressed ideal, with the elites, quote unquote, whoever they may be. There's this idea of we don't care about human advancement.
Right.
Satan can't touch God, but he sure can touch His creation.
Yeah.
And the height of His creation here on earth is mankind. So, like we've talked about in Unhuman, you see the total death toll, the destruction of human beings anytime this tactic, this ideology comes into power.
Right.
And I think it's just along that same line. I think this open border idea, especially, for politicians, it's definitely, I'm not answerable to God.
Right.
If you think about it, if I become a senator or if I become a congressman or woman or whatever the case is, or if I become president,
Mhm.
or if I become head of some administrative arm, the FBI, the CIA, I'm one of the most powerful people, not only in the
Absolutely.
country,
Yes.
in the
In
world.
the entire world. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so if I'm at the pinnacle,
Mhm.
of all this 8 billion people or however many people are on the earth, 7
Mhm.
billion, whatever the case is,
Mhm.
I am one of the few,
Yeah.
and I have all this power at my disposal.
Right.
And there's something enticing about that.
Very seductive, right?
Yes.
Very seductive.
And you want to hold on to that
Oh yeah.
at all costs.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of them have lost that ability, or lost the idea that, no, I'm a created being. I'm not
Yeah.
some demagogue.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
some, small God, or God with a small G,
Mhm.
and they don't realize that, no, they're answerable to God, and their power
Right.
flows.
Right.
Governmental power flows from God,
Yeah.
or righteous governmental
Righteous. Yeah.
power.
Mhm.
Just governmental power flows from
Mhm.
God.
Mhm.
And they're so concerned about holding on to that power that they're willing to burn the house down
Mhm.
as long as they can keep their power.
So part of that comes with the voting block. So you
Oh,
agree
yeah.
with me about the voting
Oh,
block
yeah.
thing, right?
I think.
So if I'm a progressive, I want to allow as many people in, because if I do them a favor, they're going to vote for me.
Right. Well,
And that's
they
been
also see
that way for a long time.
these blocks that they've had in the past.
Mhm.
They're losing their grip on it.
Right.
So we
Sure.
need a new underclass.
Mhm.
So many
Mhm.
times, especially on the progressive side, they need a perpetual underclass
Yeah.
in order to maintain their power.
Goes back to the oppressed and
Right,
the
right,
oppressor and the whole
and so they
same
just
old equation.
right, and so as people get out of that, they need to bring
Mhm.
more people in.
Mhm.
So you have that issue going on, that
Mhm.
this, I need to, and it's not, maybe not necessarily the people that are coming in right at the moment.
Mhm.
They know that 20 years down the road,
They're going to have families.
they're going to have families.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have this
Mhm.
voting block of 18-year-olds who are,
Mhm.
who are going to go, well, these people gave, me citizenship, or whatever,
And
whatever the case
I'm
is, or the promise, or
receiving-
they keep promising me these things.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
keep they're the ones paying for my parents or my mom's house or whatever the case is. So I'm going to keep voting for them because I want to keep getting the freebies,
Yeah.
the good stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Or at least the promise of
The
it.
promise
because
of
the
it.
promises seldom deliver, right?
Oh, no.
One of the things that came out in the book that we both enjoy, you finished
Yeah.
out, not the Unhumans, is the point that the author makes about in these revolutions where socialism, communism kind of begin to take hold. The wealth, the hope is that those in the proletariat, those in the working class, those that are that they expect the wealth to come to them. But in every case,
Right.
the wealth flows upward from that middle to upper middle class to the ruling class.
Right.
So that is what is by design keeps the proletariat in this subservient position
Of
where they're
course.
subjugated to that ruling class who have stripped the middle class of their resources, their assets, and have obviously denied any betterment of standard of living for those in the working class.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're even having this idea of, if you look at the American experiment, or in America, they're stripping the working class.
Mhm.
What they say
now with what's going on.
Yeah, they're stripping them of the ability for
Mhm.
any upward mobility.
Mhm.
So they're leaving basically a lower class that has no ability to get out of
Mhm.
that.
Right. Right.
It's interesting. In America, we always had this huge middle class, and what it always allowed to happen was people who were poor.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember. I mean, I listen to sometimes the stories of my father talk about. My great grandfather was a dirt farmer. I mean, they were
Mhm.
the Depression almost destroyed what they had. I mean, they were
Right.
giving land away just to keep from having to pay taxes on it, just to survive.
Mm.
And you go from that to where I am now.
Mhm.
My children, we may have had a garden one time, but they weren't dirt. They didn't come out of dirt, from a
Right.
dirt farmer.
Yeah.
But what that middle class allowed is somebody from the poor, the poorest of the poor, to be able to advance into the middle class, and maybe
Yeah.
their children were able to advance into the
Right.
upper middle class,
Mhm.
and so we always see this ability for upward mobility within this country. But if you strip that middle class out, then the jump is way too far.
Yeah, exactly.
For someone to go from poor to,
Can't
you
get
know,
there.
ultra rich or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
You know, you lose the ability to have a Steve Jobs or, you know, just think of, you know, who goes from, you know, the stories out there. You just lose that ability. But, you know, so they have this voting block, of course. But I also think there's also when business loses their principles of that, hey, I'm responsible to God on how I run my business. I'm responsible to how I treat my employees, to God.
And my social responsibility
to those around me.
Yep.
And it all becomes about the dollar. You know, it's just strictly about the dollar. What you see happen now is, well, we need cheaper labor.
Yeah.
You know, the average American doesn't want to work for whatever, you know, $7 or whatever the case is.
Yep.
So if I can get a couple people in here who may not have papers and I pay them $7, well, they're not going to go complain.
Right.
And so it's greed. It's just unadulterated greed on that part. So that's why you see people like the Chamber of Commerce be like, hey, we need more and more and more. Instead of saying, oh, wait just a second. Why don't we make sure that everybody here and everybody who's coming in through the proper channels has jobs and positions and whatever the case is. And hey, if, you know, corporations have to pay a little bit more, well,
that's a
worthy trade-off. But I think they just want, you know, the cheap labor. So you have that. And then then you turn around and you have this discouragement of people having children. You know, the culture's telling our young girls and young women, hey, you need to have your career first.
Yeah.
Get your career going, and you know, and then you can have kids. Later.
Yeah.
And it's the same, because, you know, family's not that important.
Right.
You know, what's the most important, what will be most fulfilling is that you work at 9 to 5 for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, so and so with that, you have this, you know, they can see it on the horizon. They know the population is going to decrease.
Right. Sure.
And so we're going to need workers, and we're going to need people feeding into Social Security because we got to keep paying, you know, the retirees and stuff like that. So I think there's multiple things going on, but all of it in the end is selfish motivation by those either in the in the corporatocracy or those in government trying to hold on to their power and their money.
So what do you think? The thing about the population control, and we've touched on that before, but kind of in just real simplistic terms, what is the advantage of that? Can you articulate that?
I cannot for the life of me really figure it out, other than I just think it goes back to the fact that Satan hates human life, and those who are part of that ideal, because it's the World Economic Foundation. It's a lot of these secular governments. They just don't they don't value children.
Yeah,
they don't value life. And so if you don't value children and you don't value life, and it's a completely narcissistic, hey, you know, circus and bread from the Roman Empire type thing, you know, you know, you should just be happy that you're getting fed and entertained with the Netflix, you know, and that is the purpose of life.
Yeah.
You know, you end up with this emptiness.
Yeah.
And you end up with a population collapse eventually because children aren't important.
And see, so the fact that you and I can't sit here and really articulate a rational, or rational is not a good word, but right, a human advantage for population control, right?
Right.
Really demonstrates how deeply entrenched this is in Satan's strategy.
Oh, I think
because there's so many other things that he's perpetrated upon us that we can say, oh, well, there's a reason for this, there's a reason for that, etc. About the best we can do with this whole thing about population control is the earth is the goddess that we should worship.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we don't overburden the goddess, and there are limited resources, and we've got to preserve those resources, i.e. the Green New Deal and how we are going against the mandates for electric vehicles and that kind of thing, thinking that that's going to solve issues. And so,
And it's crazy. And I think it's all just a money grab, but it's all about money in the end.
Because there are fewer slices to the pie,
Right.
obviously.
Obviously,
with,
yeah.
Lower population numbers.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, they do. It's that idea in Romans where it talks about they worship the creation rather than the creator.
We're seeing it right in front of our eyes.
We're seeing.
And are we seeing it that way? Because are we seeing the electric vehicle mandates? And I have nothing wrong with electric vehicles. They're fine.
If you ever test drove a Tesla, it's pretty cool.
It's a nice car. There's no doubt about it. But it goes back to the whole point of choice, right? Forcing something on us, right? It kind of goes back to the vaccine question, right?
Yeah,
the forcing of the vaccine is totally different from one choosing to take it on their own, right? So I think that is where we see this coercion that goes, I think, with a lot of this environmental stuff that kind of drives toward the population control.
Yeah, well, they know better. The elites know better.
They know better,
yeah. And so therefore they look out and go, I think there's too many people.
Yeah.
Because I can't, whatever, I can't get to. Last time I was at my favorite park, there was somebody on my park bench. So I think there's too many people, or whatever the case is. But those who espouse that, they're never like, "Hey, I'll go first."
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, they want to make sure that everybody else out there does, so they get to enjoy the fruits of everybody disappearing. I guess.
And that goes back to that Marxist thing, right, where the wealth flows upward.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the disposable ones are the ones in the working class. The disposable ones are those in the middle class who've been deposed, right? Who really don't have. Because here's the thing: you can still be called middle class if you have. But what if across the board the standards for being middle class have deteriorated? Right. And you still okay, great, but I don't have the money.
I don't have anything.
So it's kind of like us today, right? We're spending all this so much more money than we did, prior 4 years ago, right? On just stuff to. I mean, I know business owners who kind of young kids, guys in their 20s and 30s, right?
Comparatively,
who started businesses, and they're saying, "Man, they're this young. I used to have money, and now I don't." I'm saying, "Dude, look at the economic indicators. See what's happened. Inflation's real."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it eats. It's that silent tax that just eats your wealth away.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we did this weekend, I want to get this plug in before we go. Is the movie that my wife and I saw this weekend, Reagan.
Yeah.
And
was it good?
Kevin, it was so good. I mean, Dennis Quaid's a great actor. The actress that played Nancy Reagan and the chemistry. And you always, and you're younger than me.
I remember Reagan.
You remember it.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember it really well, the chemistry between Reagan and his wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they captured that so beautifully. And to see kind of the economic, just disaster that really swept him into office. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
And to understand the power of inflation and a leftist type government that did that to our nation, and how he was swept in so decisively, and to see how he responded, and most how his faith fueled. I'm talking about his faith in Jesus Christ.
Right.
I'm not talking about just this generic thing called faith.
Right.
I'm talking about the faith in the gospel of Jesus.
Right.
Pushed him and empowered him to do some incredible things.
Yeah, he definitely. We saw the wall come down, and he won. Yeah, and he won the Cold War. So we have him to thank for that.
Yeah,
it's just on his leadership alone.
But that's an example of how this economic situation is today. These young kids, I'm like, that's the way it is, right? What do we do about it? You vote, right? Get involved.
Vote. Yeah, and regardless, I think that I would encourage them, regardless, to continue to be involved in church, because ultimately, that's where our hope lies.
This is where truth is.
Right. No matter even if Trump gets in or whatever, or the economics changes completely, unless we continue to ground ourselves in what the Word of God says, unless we continue to ground ourselves in church. It'll just be a minor blip, and we'll be back to
biblically based church.
Exactly.
Let's qualify that, right?
Biblically based church.
You're one of the most avid proponents of that. You remind me of that a lot.
Yes,
So I would
yes,
remind you
a
of something you
biblically
remind me of.
based church.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's just going to be a blip, and we're going to be right back to
Right,
the thing.
exactly.
And we need to change. We need a course correction.
Yeah,
definitely.
we do.
So anyway, well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I
Yep.
know we got a little bit went a different direction just because of the eating the cats. In
There's always
Ohio.
some new stuff coming up, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So like us, subscribe, follow, and tell other people, and just we're trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
So.
God bless. Take care.